Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app. Red Circle's going away, so if you're Android, we recommend that you catch us on Spotify or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. If you're Apple, you can continue to listen to us on Apple Podcasts. Also, check out Off the Floor. That's our new Discord, $2.99 per month, 10 different channels. Communicate with us and other Heat fans all day long. Get away from the clutter of Elon's Twitter or X or whatever it is he's calling it these days. Check out Off the Floor. Again, the link is right here in the description on the YouTube channel, the podcast feed, and pinned to the top of the Five Reasons Twitter page. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. That includes a great local new sponsor. This is called Jerseys305.com. That's Jerseys305.com. This is your home for dead stock and vintage jerseys from the Heat, Panthers, Dolphins, Marlins, and the other local teams. Born from a passion of wearing jerseys of old styles and past players, Jerseys 305 aims to make every fan stand out from the crowd with unique pieces that you don't commonly see anymore, maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago, but not today. Every jersey is in pristine condition, ensuring that you receive a piece of Miami history in superb shape. Maybe they have that Avi Garcia jersey. I know all the Marlins fans want that one. There is an exclusive partnership with Five Reasons Sports. So to celebrate, Jerseys 305 is offering all the listeners of Five on the Floor a 10% discount on their next purchase using the code 5, that's FIVE, at checkout. So go to jerseys305.com, use the code 5, and you get 10% off everything in the collection. And now, today's episode. All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at Five Reasons Sports. And I got Marco Romo. You may be familiar with Marco's work from that platform that I mentioned earlier. Marco's also covered some road games for us this season. He is not a good luck charm, so we'll just start right there. The losses in OKC and Dallas, although I think that had more to do with the Heat than it had to do specifically with Marco, so we might let him off the hook. Marco, thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.
Always, man. I always love talking ball with Ethan.
Yes, well, that's much appreciated. And again, we're giving look, you were first on the list tonight. You're first on the list, but I need to give Brady an occasional night off because otherwise, his agent gonna reach out to me and it's gonna get ugly and all that good stuff. All right, so let's get to it. 9 games left in the season. The Heat just mollywopped Portland. I've never gotten a chance to use that on a podcast. 60-point victory against Joe Cronin's cronies. Now they play Washington, team that they lost to, a loss that we may be lamenting in about 2 to 3 weeks because that may be the one that does them in for getting out of the play-in. They are currently ahead of Philadelphia, but behind Indiana for the 6th spot. Orlando is playing as we speak, so they've been coming back to the pack a little bit. I don't know that the Heat can necessarily catch them. However, with 9 games left, I'm going to go through 9 themes with you quickly. And it's basically going to be, is it sustainable? And how much does it matter? Okay. Mm-hmm. So let's start with the one that everybody's talking about. Bam is not just shooting a 3 a game. He's now shooting multiple 3s per game and making them. He's essentially like a 70% 3-point shooter over the last 3 weeks on relatively low volume. But to me, he looks like one of the 5 best 3-point shooters on this team if you just study the form and didn't know the history. And, of course, two of the Heat's 3 best 3-point shooters, or actually 3 of them, Love, Robinson, and Herro haven't been playing lately, although it does appear that Love and Robinson will be playing against Washington. Tyler did not make the trip. So is Bam's 3-point shooting sustainable, Marco? And how much does it matter?
I mean, how much can you say is 70% 3-point shooting ever sustainable? Like, even the best shooters aren't there, but I'll say it's not sustainable, the efficiency, but I think his willingness is sustainable. Because I think that, because he recently said he just woke up one day and he wanted to shoot 3s, which is a thing I think a lot of Heat fans probably, they took offense to that because they've been wanting him to shoot 3s for a while, and they thought it was honestly the coaching staff that was telling him, no, you don't really need to do that, but it was just been Bam the whole time. So I think his willingness is at least sustainable. In the playoffs, though, I don't know how much he's actually going to shoot 3s. It might be a thing where he's just going to try this out for the end of the regular season and see, maybe I can take this into next season. as it'll be like more of like a measuring stick kind of thing. Uh, and I don't think it matters though. It doesn't matter this season. I think it matters more for the future. It's something that I think he was gonna have to add this to his game eventually. Playing with Jimmy Butler all these years, pretty much playing in a phone booth for their careers because they both play in the same kind of spaces. They both kind of thrive in the same spaces. So one of these guys is going to have to start shooting threes. And Jimmy, this year having his best 3-point shooting season, that's helped in some cases, but it's also really not mattered because those guys aren't volume 3-point shooters. Jimmy Butler is a good volume or is a good shooter this year, but he's also still not really, a guy that's going to pull you out unless it's the playoffs. He's not going to be out there shooting a lot of threes. But I don't think it matters for this season. But I think it matters definitely for the future and him kind of like expanding out his game and kind of making him more of a well-rounded forward that Heat fans really want him to play a power forward. But if you're not going to get him a shooter at the 5, he's going to have to be playing inside a lot.
Yeah, I'm actually with you on this. I don't know that this is something we're going to see a ton in the postseason, but I do think now that there will be more of a focus in the offseason. And I've said over and over that I think it's more important that he develops moves closer to the basket, and than further away. I don't think he needs to do the Bosch thing yet, but it's always nice to have it in the back pocket. There may be a three that he pulls out in the playoffs, and we're like, oh, there it is. But I don't think that this is going to be something that they're leaning into heavily going into the postseason. All right, number two, we saw Jaime Jaquez look a little more spry in this last game after the last 3 weeks. His play has declined. I mean, there's no way around it. And it seems like they've been putting him in the box, or defenders have, kind of forcing him to be a standstill spot up, 3-point shooter, which is not really his game at this stage. But it looked like Rozier made a concerted effort to get Jaime some easy touches early in this last one. So I'll just get to this. Do we think that Jaime is through the rookie wall? And if so, can we guarantee he's going to have a rotation spot in the playoffs?
Ooh, that's actually a really good question. I think right now the rookie wall really hit him, and it's also that a lot of the teams that he snuck up on early in the season, he's not a secret anymore. The league knows, this guy, the Heat took him, and he's good. He came off of college, off all those years. He's an older rookie, obviously. So you would have thought maybe he would have gotten through that rookie wall a little sooner than some of these guys. But I honestly think it's just it's a matter of a lot of games for a guy who is not used to this many games, and that happens with a lot of rookies. And he also has the added pressure of playing on a team that's fighting for something. A lot of these other guys, like the Brandon Millers, like the Scoot Henderson, like Wimby, they're not not Wimby because Wimby's going to be really good, but it's just these guys aren't they don't have the pressure of having to play for a team that's actually going to be fighting for postseason success. And that to answer your other question about a spot in the playoffs, the rotations they shorten. Haywood Highsmith, if he continues to shoot like this, like at almost a Bam like percentage from three, he's hitting step backs now. I mean, if he continues to shoot like this, I think Spo is going to probably, lean more to giving the minutes to a veteran like him. He's been, he was last year in the playoffs. He played a little bit. He guarded Jason Tatum really well. So he's not afraid to cut those minutes to, young guys. But if Jaime shows something in at least the first round, or if they play in the play-in, I think, he'll find minutes. But the leashes get shorter in the playoffs. And I definitely see a path to where, Haywood Highsmith takes a lot of those minutes away from him.
Well, you jumped ahead on one of my Highsmith questions, so I'm going to sub something in for that later on. I do think that Spo's going to give Jaime a lot of opportunity over the last 9 games to kind of work his way out of it. But I don't think he's the guaranteed rotation player, or actually, we had him as a guaranteed closer earlier in the season. I'm not sure that that's necessarily the case right now. Which again, if that's what happens, it's not the worst thing. I mean, again, you're talking about a guy who's essentially by the end of this is going to have played 3 college seasons, and was relied upon heavily because he's played more games than anybody else on the team, and that is something I think we need to take into account. All right, number three, more aggressive Terry Rozier last night.
Mhm.
Efficiency has not been there every night, unless you're looking at like assist to turnover, in which case the efficiency has been there. But I'm talking more about the shooting efficiency. I feel like a lot of this is contingent on something I'm going to say next, which is depending on whether Tyler comes back or in what condition. But right now, do we think that a more aggressive Terry Rozier is sustainable, or are you putting it more on who's out there with him?
Yeah, I definitely think it's more of the latter because when he got here, he was trying not to ruffle too many feathers. He was trying to fit in, and to his detriment at some points. But I think more aggressive. I think to me that'll be how willing is he to take up that pull up three off of a Bam screen and to pull the defense out. That's all that really kind of matters to me is forcing the defense to guard up and not kind of just letting walk into a pick and roll where you're kind of just stopped at the free throw line and you have no really options except for maybe shoot a mid-range J that the defense is going to give you that. He's been willing to shoot that a lot more, but it really I think it's just for me the willingness to shoot the pull-up three. It pulls. It's something that we actually had a problem with Kyle Lowry. He wasn't willing to shoot that pull-up three that kind of made his career early on. Back to the Houston days. That's what kind of like got him going, and that's been the problem with Terry is his willingness to shoot off of those high screen rolls with Bam. But I think it depends on who's going to be out there. Jimmy, Tyler, Bam. If they're going to be out there starting with him, that's a lot of shots that I think Heat fans are going to have to be fine with shots being distributed the way they are, especially in the playoffs. But I think Terry, I don't think this, shooting this much is sustainable. It's just about his willingness to take the right shots. Is kind of what I'm going for.
We're number four here before we go to a break. If Duncan Robinson is coming back, that means that Patty Mills likely will not be starting in Washington. He's already started more games than in all but four other seasons, which is crazy if you think about it when he's 35 years old. We've seen a little of DeLon Wright now also because they've been so shorthanded. So I'll just ask this question. Based on what you've seen so far, who should get a chance at sort of fringe rotation minutes when everybody's healthy and who will?
Ooh, I think my
Wright or
answer.
Mills?
I think my answer to both of those is probably DeLon Wright, only because of the defensive possibilities that he gives Bo. Uh, but if they are, it depends on who's out there, obviously, because they might be, scars for shooting, and that's been pretty much why he's starting. If Patty Mills is his whole career, he's been a movement shooter. He's been a guy that comes off of screens, and that's why he's been for lack of a better term, kind of a plug-in guy for Duncan because they're so used to running the same kind of similar sets for each other. But I think DeLon might be the guy who gets the nod because Spo's always been a defensive guy. Come playoff time, I think those kind of guys have more value. You go back to last year, like Haywood, he wasn't, this even as good of a 3-point shooter as this year. He was even worse last year, but he still got those opportunities because he gave such, good defensive versatility against a lot of teams. And I think that might be the case for DeLon. You might be able to get like a Victor Oladipo 2022 like run from him because he put him out there specifically just for defense and for some pick and roll stuff with Bam. But I think the defensive upside is probably what gives DeLon kind of the nod there.
I'm going to combine those as 4 and 5 because you jumped ahead on our Highsmith one. Although I appreciate you being forward thinking on that. Before we do, want to mention a couple great sponsors of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Our friends over at Better Edge. We've got a competition on there right now. Make sure you sign up using the code 5RSN or 5Reasons. It's at betteredge.com. You can sign up for free. You get $20 to play. And you can enter our latest contest, which is basically 8 questions about their various statistical categories and standings categories prior to the end of the season. We're going to be doing a giveaway with that. Again, there's no cost to enter, and the top 3 get prizes. So go to betteredge.com, use the code 5RSN or 5Reasons to play. This is legal sports betting. Also, do want to mention our fantasy partner, and yes, you can still play Prize Picks in 31 other states, and you can actually see the props in Florida. So something's coming there, I believe. Check it out, prizepicks.com. Use the code 5 FIVE, get that initial deposit matched up to $100. I would tell you to write your congressman, but they won't listen, and probably it's going to get changed before we get a chance to deal with that anyway. So go to Prize Picks again, use the code 5 Better Edge, use the code 5RSN. All right, number 5 here. Number 5. The Miami Open is over tomorrow. Do you think we can count on Jimmy Butler's full attention? I'm sorry, this is number 6.
I mean, I could still tackle that if you want to tackle it.
Go ahead.
Okay,
Jump in.
I think we can. It's seeing Twitter's reaction to Jimmy not playing the other day. I think that's just a matter of just built up frustration over the past ever since he's gotten here. He hasn't played as much as you would probably hope to, and you guys covered it on a recent pod about what's been up with the Heat, not being healthy ever since really Jimmy got here, or ever since Dwayne Wade retired. So I think it. I think we can. I think it's just been overblown, this whole stuff. But I think I get the frustration from the fans, and it's because it's your superstar as well, and you expect a guy like this that bought into the culture, that brought into like this idea that the Miami Heat had of him being the next face of the team, would have played a lot more. And it's just it's very frustrating for everybody. But I think you can count on his full attention, especially come playoff time. He's proven again and again that more often than not he's going to be there and he's going to show up. And if he has another run, Heat fans won't remember this at all. Come next season, they'll be like, oh yeah, I forgot all about that. They'll be like, it'll be just like that. Nobody will care. But if they flame out in the playoffs first round, I think you're going to hear those conversations maybe get a little bit louder.
Well, the good thing is if they flame out, there's more time to get out to the U.S. Open. That's usually in June. I usually was, isn't I usually I make that trip typically. So maybe I'll bump into Jimmy there. I do think we're going to see him a little more focused. It was kind of funny that he comes back and then he's got that laugher of a game where he's plus 42 in 25 minutes, and honestly, he really didn't need to play in that one. But it was good to see him back on the floor doing his primary job. I don't have a problem with the tennis stuff. I really do. I'm joking about it. There are worse things that people can be doing on their off days, and that they do on their off days. But what I've said about Jimmy, and I'll be consistent about this, it's not the games that he's missed. There's been legitimate reasons for, I believe for all of them, or at least most of the games that he's missed. It's if he's going to play, particularly against the good opponents, go balls out. Don't. There's been inconsistent effort against quality teams this year. We've done podcasts about it. That I think is more the Heat fans' frustration, not him missing, one out of every 3 games or something like that. It's more so the 2 that he does play. Okay, let's get the Jimmy Butler. Let's not wait until May or June. Let's make sure that Jimmy Butler is still in there. Okay, the guy that we're talking about against the best teams, and that has just not been the case consistently this season. All right, let's get to this one because this is the hard one. Duncan's back tomorrow. He beat Tyler back. I mean, literally had an injury, hurt his back, missed more time than he expected to miss because when we talked to him, he thought he might be coming back a little bit sooner. He's still back before Tyler Herro. Is there any question at this point who the starting 2 guard is the rest of the season?
I mean, there shouldn't be, but I think there's still going to be questions. But I think it has to be Duncan. And it's also a matter of getting these guys into a rhythm. Whoever's going to be out there, you're going to have to run with them throughout the first round of the playoffs, because you can't have another. Let's say Tyler gets back by the last game of the season, and you immediately put him in the starting lineup. That's going to be the question that Spo has to answer, because I don't think you do. You would have actually probably had he come back, let's say a week ago, you would have been fine, him starting, but you also would have had more time for him to get acclimated with everybody. But with the season coming down, the wire that it is right now, you're not even sure if you're going to get Tyler back, let's say to the first round of the playoffs. So I think it to me, it's a simple, yeah, Duncan is the starting 2 guard. if Tyler, comes back from injury, whenever that is. So I think yes, but Eric Spoelstra, if he chooses to start Tyler, that might set off a whole other chain of events. But I think to me right now, it's Duncan.
I think it has to be at this point, and we've kind of moved slowly towards this position over the course of the year, and then just time ran out. I mean, I just think that's where we're at. I mean, there were not enough good reps between their big three, their so-called big three this season, that you can say, okay, it's worth just going back to that. We didn't see it. It didn't. The numbers were not good. The eye test was not good. We had talked a lot about staggering anyway, and then Tyler got hurt again, and then it was an injury that was not expected, that nobody even really saw, and he hasn't been on the floor. And again, they're not setting a timetable. I'm sure they have a timetable internally, but they're not sharing the timetable. And so it's not just about the fans, it's about the connection with teammates and all that. And really just look, the one guy who makes their lineups work is Duncan Robinson. And we have seen with Duncan out, like what this looks like when they've had to plug in Patty or somebody else at the two spot. It's ugly, and it wouldn't be that ugly with Tyler, but it would be a different game. And I just don't think they can go to a different game at this stage of the season. So Tyler comes back, he can energize the bench, and you can have a bench that's Tyler, Caleb, Jaquez, and Love, or Tyler, Caleb, Highsmith, and Love, or some combination of those players. Pretty damn good bench. It's probably as good a bench as any team in the Eastern Conference is going to have, and one of the better benches in the league. But to plug him back into a starting lineup like nothing happened, this is not plugging Joe Dumars back in with Isaiah Thomas. Like this is not something we've seen work over and over and over. He and Rozier have not had the reps, and the reps with Jimmy and Bam this year have just not been what you'd hope for. So that's where I'm at with it, and I feel like everybody on five on the floor is kind of in the same spot. All right, let's get to number 8 here. Nikola Jovic, who is going to make the trip, and it is going to play. Caleb Martin is out in Washington. Jovic probably gets his starting spot back. Is Nikola Jovic your starter at the 4?
Uh, for the rest of the season, I think for sure. I think you see what Spo is trying to do with him, and it's building confidence, building reps with Bam, which is a lot of what fans wanted to see ever since they drafted Jovic. So I think yeah, he's going to be the starter. Whether that keeps up in the playoffs, that'll be a different question. And I think in the playoffs, I can't answer that because I think he's probably not going to be playing much. I'll say he might get like the first 5 minutes of the first 2 games of a series, and that might be it. But as far as the rest of the season, I think yes, he's going to be the starter, and I don't have a problem with it either. He's kind of gotten a rhythm into how everybody plays and how not to really get in the way while also kind of looking for his. A lot of that, has been a fact because he's kind of had to carry more of a load with some of the guys that have been injured. But I think, yes, for the rest of the season, getting him the reps, getting him the time with Bam, with Jimmy, if this is going to be one of your future young guys, getting him these kind of minutes right now is going to be very, very, very good for him in the future.
All right, let's close with this, the most important one we get off of the individual topics. They are the 7 seed right now. Indiana has righted themselves a little bit. Halliburton is shooting the ball better than he was about a week ago. Siakam has had some games here. Their defense has not been horrific, which it was earlier in the season. And the Heat have one more game up there. They play up in Indiana. We know the history in that building. Some of it is actually better than Heat fans remember. If you go back to like 2012 and some of the others, but LeBron and Dwayne in their prime are not walking through that door. So do the Heat get out of the play-in?
I think they do, but it all kind of. I think it comes down to that game in Indiana, honestly. When you look at the schedules, the Heat, well, we have been saying they've had one of the more easy schedules after the All-Star break, and they still haven't really, made that leap. They've been middling to fine after the All-Star break in terms of record. Even this past week has kind of been an encapsulation because you get blown out against New Orleans, you blow out the Cavs, and then you lose really bad against the Warriors, and then you blow out the Blazers. So they're a very up and down team right now because again the injuries have been hitting them harder than a lot of these other teams. But I think they do. I think they win in Indiana, and if nothing, that'll give them, that'll be the game that maybe you'd be like, okay, now they're hitting the playoff mode. This will be the game that kind of like locks them in. But if that game goes the other way, I think you have a date with Philadelphia in the play, and it's kind of sewn up. You're gonna probably have it at home unless Embiid comes back and gives the Sixers a little jolt here. But I think that game in Indiana is probably the biggest game of the season, which is kind of funny if you had said that before the season started. But I think they do get out of the plan, and if not, winning that game against the Sixers in the plan, it won't be easy, especially if Embiid is back. But I think I have confidence in the Heat probably winning that. But again, that'll be at home, which they've been bad at home this year. Not to
Yes.
say bad, but they just have been very, middling all season.
No, they've
Uh,
been bad. When you're 500, you're bad. Like that. That's the thing. I mean, I don't. Um, you're bad. I mean, that's the issue. There's no, as Jimmy said, like nobody's afraid of going in there. And so that's the problem. And but it doesn't mean you don't want the home games in the playoffs. It just means that they can't count on that. And that's why I've constantly said like the seventh seed play-in thing is tricky. Like if you get Philadelphia and they've got Embiid back, you're not favored in that game at home. Remember when they beat Philadelphia on Christmas, Embiid didn't play, and of course now they have the ghost of Kyle Lowry in there. And I don't think there's enough sage that can be spread in that building by our friend Giancarlo to
yep.
make that all right. So anyway, Marco, we appreciate it. We will see how correct some of these predictions were. We'll hold you to them. And if you hit on at least 8, you replace Alex on 5 on the floor. Have a good one. And thanks everybody and our sponsors, jerseys305.com, Better Edge, and Prize Picks. Have a good one.